right, so this lecture is on the model minority myth and the Korean adoptee experience. There will be two videos. So this one will only cover the first part, which is on the model minority myth, and then we'll have a second video that will cover the Korean adoptee experience. So the model minority myth has actually been around for a while, since the 1970s, 1980s. Here you see several images. These are all connected to some articles, so I'll post those for you through Canvas so you can kind of read a little bit more if you'd like. But we're going to cover it in particular with the Korean adoptee experience. So you can kind of understand the broader view, but also connect it directly to an actual example. So I'll be explaining it using two different concepts, exceptionalism and assimilation. Exceptionalism is this idea that one is special within a racial formation framework. This is known as a racial project, and it's usually done to structure one non-white race as better or superior than another non-white racial group. So this concept is readily applied, of course, to the Asian American experience. And as I noted before, it will be particularized for the Korean adoptee experience. Now, one example of exceptionalism historically has been naturalization and citizenship. Originally, naturalization eligibility started with notions of white supremacy, dictating who could be part of the American dream and who was excluded. Asian Americans were initially socially constructed as for foreigners to that dream. So they were excluded, and yet economically they are desirable as labor. So they have this sort of competing status of being both valuable and foreign at the same time, creating what Claire Jean Kim has called the racial triangulation between whiteness and blackness. Now, specifically for Korean adoptees, they have played a specific role in exemplifying this triangulation as exceptional Asian Americans that could go beyond this idea of a forever foreigner racial construct that had been given up until the 1950s and 1960s. Now, the way that they become exceptional is that they get adopted into and belong to white families. As adoptable orphans, they hold promises of being able to be included in ways that other marginalized ethnic groups, in particular Black and Indigenous children, could not. So now, instead of a forever foreigner, they become acceptable foreigners within this sort of national family. They do so because they don't disrupt the racial order. They become reified as part of the naturalized order of what is then called multiculturalism. They become culturally white while still standing out as Asian. So the way that that is done is through both domestic policy and foreign policy. So with domestic policy, the country of the United States establishes legal pathways that reflect this exceptionalism for Korean adoptees, such as the 1953 Refugee Relief Act that allowed Korean adoptees to circumvent quotas. The Orphan Eligibility Clause of the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1961 recategorized Korean adoptees from orphan to eligible relative, giving them unique privileges as children to white families that are not given to other groups, specifically Asian immigrants. So they virtually skip the line to become naturalized as their white parents fill out this sort of paperwork. Adoption from Asian countries then becomes most desirable compared to any other foreign country. Exceptionalism is also a matter of foreign policy. So the way that foreign adoption, especially from Korea, is an exceptionalism. Is they become sort of a rationale for intervening in other countries. This is particularly true as the United States has developed a foreign policy of military conquest in Asian countries. So Korean adoptees become part of a narrative to kind of erase or kind of subdue that framework. by being part of a humanitarian narrative that covers up the devastation caused by a war that the US helped initiate. Adoptees are told that they were chosen, that they are receiving a better life than the one they would have had in Korea, upholding the US as a superior place to grow up. This narrative is also covered up, or at least uh, expressed in terms of gratitude and chosenness for the United States and for what their white families can offer them that their Korean family could not. Another way that the mono-minority myth functions is through passing or assimilation. This is the idea that one can be white without presenting as physically or phenotypically as white through a process known as assimilation. So even though Asian Americans are not white, they can be socialized into whiteness and carried by adjacency white privilege. The vast majority of Korean adoptees are adopted into white families, which has led many Korean adoptees to identify as white or white passing. White passing is different for Korean American or Korean adoptees in that they are, again, physically or phenotypically Asian. So passing has more to do with cultural passing and acceptability into white spaces. Passing within this country, or sorry, within this context is largely done within a framework of colorblindness. And colorblindness is the idea that we are living in a post-racial society, an integrated, non-racist sort of melting pot ideal. Most Korean adoptees raised in white families are told that they don't see color and that their children are treated the same as any other member in their families. This is seen as benevolent in the hope that the Korean adoptees will feel secure in their belonging. Specifically, colorblindness, however, denies the Korean adoptee the process of racial, ethnic, and cultural development as a Korean American, thereby placing them outside of their race, as well as being racialized within white communities as non-white, not Asian. They are then both hypervisible and invisible in both white spaces and in Asian spaces. Assimilation or passing for Korean adoptees as transracial represents opportunities to bypass collective representation of being racialized in favor of being seen as an individual and succeeding based on principles of white supremacy. Passing or exceptionalism comes with the expectation that the Korean adoptee will excel, showing the fruits of the sacrifices made to become part of a middle-class white family. They are expected to be the model minority as the idealized adoptee because of the benefits and opportunities afforded to them by their white families. And they are expected to perform as such. They are often placed in almost exclusively white spaces. However, this process also denies Korean adoptees a pathway of authenticity to their racialized selves, as they will never be truly accepted as Korean to Koreans, nor will they ever be truly raceless within white spaces. Finally, passing effectively erases the past for Korean adoptees, which is marked with a history of war and neocolonialism and an imperialist context that made their adoption systematically possible in the first place. They are passed into white parents or into white families whose love will save them from the truly awful circumstances, that's part of the narrative of what they are told about their birth country and birth families. And if they accept this narrative, they are awarded with privileges of white adjacency. So I have a short clip I wanted to show you that helps to kind of exemplify further what I shared in this lecture.
I saw myself as white because my parents are white. You reflect yourself in them. And then I realized I'm not white. And it was so strange because I knew I was Korean, I knew I was adopted all my life, but this image was so strong. I even studied Korean at the university, so I was really aware of my origin, and still I saw myself as white. When I mirror myself and my sisters, they are also white because they are the children of my parents, and we are a white family. It's so strange. So that didn't really help me, having Asian sisters.
Throughout the 20th century, the demand for children to adopt has always been higher than supply. In the 1970s, it actually became acute. And so there was this thing that people were calling a white baby famine. One of the reasons why there's a white baby famine is the legalization of abortion. You have more widespread use of birth control. And because of the women's rights movement, increased acceptance of single women being able to raise their own children.
And you had an increasing activism around transracial adoption. And you had parents in the US really expressing their beliefs in a kind of global humanity through adopting across racial lines. But by the early 1970s, the adoption of Black children into white families was highly politicized.
Similar concerns are voiced by Native Americans who say that white parents adopting Native American children is problematic for Native American sovereignty. One of the results was that Korean children became even more desirable. They are thought to be free of political baggage. There's no outcry from the Asian American community. There's no resistance. And then on top of that, you have these emerging ideas of Asians as a model minority. This idea that they can be racially flexible, good students, that they'll be good kids.
The number of children leaving Korea was growing exponentially.